Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving right into Asia's most legendary military text, Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Whether you're a hardcore history buff, a competitive professional, or just someone hunting for a masterful approach to strategy, well, this text is pretty much the ultimate roadmap. We're going to break down this entire book today, taking its 13 distinct chapters and zooming out to see them as one cohesive strategic journey. Let's get into it.
Here's our agenda for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the legacy of 2 millennia. Then, we'll break the summary into 3 core stages. Phase 1, the preparation, Phase 2, the battlefield, and Phase 3, advanced tactics. Finally, we'll wrap up by exploring the ancient text. And rather than just reading off a boring list of chapters, we're going to use this agenda to map out the thematic arc of a complete military campaign.
Section 1. Legacy of 2 millennia. 2,000. That is how many years this text has existed and been revered. I mean, just think about that for a second. In a world where tactics, technology, and whole empires rise and fall in the literal blink of an eye, the structural wisdom of this book has completely endured the ultimate test of time. And why? Because it deals with the bedrock of fundamental human conflict and strategy. In fact, the source material defines this book unequivocally as, quote, the most important and most famous military treatise in Asia. So, mastering this ancient masterpiece, it's not just about reading an old book. It's about grasping the absolute authority on strategy. It really sets the stakes incredibly high for anyone wanting to truly understand leadership, conflict, and ultimately, victory.
Section 2, Phase 1, the preparation.
Okay, so any successful campaign has to begin sequentially, right? And Sun Tzu structures the opening of his book to reflect exactly this. Step 1 is all about laying plans, carefully calculating your resources and really understanding your environment. Then Step 2 evaluates the literal nitty-gritty logistics of waging war, stuff like the cost, the supplies, the timeline. Only after you've nailed those do you reach Step 3, attack by stratagem. The text basically suggests that the most brilliant victory doesn't actually come from fighting at all. It comes from outthinking your opponent through deep, deep preparation. You're dismantling their alliances and their plans before you ever even cross swords. Which brings us to the absolute core takeaway of Phase 1. Battles are won before swords are even drawn. Seriously, if you take away just one thing from these first 3 chapters, it's that your initial strategy, your careful calculations, and your planning, that is what dictates the final outcome, way before the physical reality of a battle even happens. Section 3. Phase 2. The battlefield. Now, moving out of the quiet war room and onto the absolute chaos of the battlefield requires a masterclass in dynamic execution. First, a strategist has to evaluate tactical dispositions, basically positioning your troops so they literally cannot be defeated, all while waiting for the enemy to make a fatal mistake. From there, it's all about energy, using timing and momentum to strike with maximum impact. Then, you're forced to analyze weak points and strong, actively probing the enemy to avoid their strengths and hit them right where they're most vulnerable. Ultimately, mastering maneuvering and variation in tactics means that as the reality on the ground shifts, which it always does, your strategy adapts right along with it. The whole thing culminates with the army on the march, focusing on reading the physical signs of your enemy and managing encampments. Once the prep is done, the actual execution requires constant, relentless adaptation. Section 4, Phase 3, Advanced Tactics. So the book concludes by focusing on unconventional warfare and the absolute mastery of both the physical and psychological environment. This means deeply understanding terrain, knowing exactly when to fight, when to hold, and when to retreat based entirely on the landscape. It also requires navigating the highly complex 9 situations. These range from easy, accessible ground all the way to desperate, deadly ground where an army literally has no choice but to fight with everything they have just to survive. Then the strategy goes far beyond standard combat. It gets into devastatingly destructive tactics, like the attack by fire, where you're using the environment itself as a weapon against the enemy's resources. And finally, the whole text culminates with the use of spies. Mastering intelligence, information gathering, and espionage, these are positioned as the absolute final non-negotiable steps to total victory.
Section 5. Exploring the ancient text.
So how on earth do we navigate such a dense, ancient text today without getting completely overwhelmed? Well, we've now got this sharp, fascinating contrast between a 2,000-year-old ancient treatise and highly accessible modern digital tools. Modern source materials provide side-by-side translations, expert commentary, and instantly accessible PDF downloads. It's literally the ancient world seamlessly meeting the digital age.
And there are specific digital features that make this focused learning super easy and highly efficient. You can use an easy-read self-turning online booklet that just feels intuitive. Or if you're doing deep research, maybe applying this to your profession, there's an index cloud for lightning-fast cross-references. It completely optimizes how you connect complex ideas across all the chapters. There's even a random passage generator to test your knowledge, along with dedicated search and browse tools. Studying these 13 chapters is no longer this massive chore of deciphering old scrolls. It's totally modernized for rapid understanding.
Unlocking all this ancient strategy is now just a click away. All 13 chapters, spanning all the way from laying plans to the use of spies, complete with side-by-side commentary, are ready for you to explore, reference, and download immediately. The barrier to entry has completely vanished. We have just summarized an entire masterclass in strategy, starting from the initial planning stages, moving through managing the raw chaos of the battlefield, all the way to advanced unconventional tactics. The digital resources are sitting right there waiting for you. So here is my final question for you. How will you deploy this 2,000-year-old strategic wisdom in your own life today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly, highly encourage you to dive into the text yourself.